After the end of World War II, the Allies had to negotiate terms for peace treaties in Europe. Ever since Lenin had taken power in 1917, the capitalist democratic West had distrusted the USSR. Capitalism and communism were fundamentally opposed to each other and led to distrust, which deteriorated relations between the US and the USSR after the defeat of Nazi Germany. On March 5, 1946, Churchill delivered a speech entitled Sinews of Peace, which introduced the idea of the Iron Curtain that was spreading. It warned of the dangers of the lack of liberty under communism. This antagonized the Soviet Union, despite the fact that Great Britain and the USSR were still allied. At the Yalta Conference in 1945, the Allies decided to divide Germany into 4 different zones, which would be governed by the US, Britain, the USSR, and France. Germany's capital, Berlin, was also divided between these 4 major powers. There quickly arose tensions and disagreements between the occupying powers about how best to politically and economically govern their sections. The USSR wanted as many reparations as possible from Germany, while Britain and the US, having learned their lesson from World War I, thought the economy should remain strong enough for the Germans to pay for their own food and materials. The Potsdam Conference took place in the summer of 1945. It was the last meeting between the Big Three. At the conference, an Allied Control Council for Germany was established, in addition to several other agreements about the administration of Germany's economy and war reparations. However, these so-called agreements were largely unsuccessful in dealing with the problems of Germany. Thus, Potsdam paved the way for more conflicts down the road.
In 1946, the compromise over reparations made at Potsdam started to break down. The western zones were taking in most German refugees that had been expelled by former German territories like Poland, so West Germany had more people to feed than Eastern Germany. The US and Britain, therefore, wanted to delay giving the USSR the quotas of materials for reparations agreed to at Potsdam. The Soviets saw this as an attempt to make the reconstruction of Germany capitalist. The USSR claimed that the economic merging of the American and British zones in 1947, forming Bizonia, violated the Potsdam Agreement. The Soviets tried to destroy Bizonia by demanding new Central German administration under 4-power control so they could rule all together. The U.S. Marshall Plan stipulated that aid should be provided to West Germany, but Stalin refused any aid to East Germany as he was suspicious of the Marshall Plan's motives. Stalin viewed the Marshall Plan as dollar imperialism, meaning an attempt to promote capitalism in Europe, leading to increased tensions between the West and the USSR. France joined Bizonia in 1948, and together with the US and Britain, they introduced a new currency to help the German economy recover. Stalin viewed this as a threat, and the day after the currency was introduced, he cut off all road and rail traffic from east to west Berlin, and the blockade began. In response to Stalin stopping all travel between East Germany and West Berlin, the Western powers began to airlift food and supplies to West Germany.
The Berlin airlift lasted 321 days and aimed to deliver supplies to the 2 million citizens of West Berlin. A total of 272,000 flights were made into West Berlin. The airlifts cost a total of $224 million and delivered over 2 million tons of food, fuel, machinery, and other supplies. The Soviets had cut off power in West Berlin, so 2/3 of the materials airlifted was coal. Flights were also made from West Berlin to Western Europe to deliver exports. The Soviets did not shoot the planes down, as both sides were afraid to do anything that would constitute war. This is also why the Soviets did not occupy West Berlin.
On May 12, 1949, the Soviet Union lifted the 11-month blockade after secret talks between American diplomat Philip Jessup and Soviet diplomat Jacob Malik. The West had begun a trade embargo against Eastern Germany, which was a large factor in lifting the blockade. There are several historian perspectives on the Cold War, the first of which is the orthodox perspective that the USSR was to blame for the Cold War. In terms of the blockade, the orthodox perspective is shown in Avi Shaim's assertion that Truman perceived the blockade of Berlin as one more manifestation of Moscow's clear, planned, and ruthless design to extend its despotic rule to the rest of Europe. The revisionist perspective that the U.S. was too aggressive in dealing with the USSR is shown in the following quote from Ronald E. Pulaski. The Truman administration regarded the Berlin blockade as a major test of the West's determination to defend the freedom of not only West Berlin, but all of Western Europe. Accordingly, the United States took vigorous countermeasures. The post-revisionist view, which gives shared accountability to both the U.S. and USSR, is reflected in this quote from Alexander L. George. The steady deterioration of relations between the Western powers and the Soviet Union in the post-World War II period culminated on June 24, 1948, with the Soviet blockade of Allied ground access to West Berlin. The United States had made no special effort to deter the Soviets from making this move.